Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Data Faces podcast, where we bring the stories behind data, analytics, and AI. I'm your host, David Sweenor, founder of Tiny Tech Guides. On this podcast, we go beyond the technology and explore the human side of data-driven innovation, how it's transforming businesses and shaping our world. Today, we have a very special guest. I am honored to be joined by Sanjeev Mohan. He's the principal at Sanjmo and former VP of research at Gartner. We spent years helping organizations around the globe understand and adopt data strategies. So in this episode, we're going to talk about AI agents. We'll be exploring the current landscape of agents, what's real, what's hype, and where it's headed next. So Sanjeev, welcome to the Data Faces podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell us, for people who aren't familiar with your work, sort of what you do and a little about Sanjmo?
Thank you so much for asking. I am a former Gartner analyst, like you said. I was part of the data and AI practice, and I was responsible for defining the agenda, having a great time. Gartner is an amazing place. But about 3.5 years ago, I decided it's time for me to just go strike it on my own and just explore the bleeding edge of technology. Something that a lot of Gartner clients don't want to be at, and I wanted to be at that stage. In fact, it was amazing for me to make that journey at that time, because lo and behold, very soon generative AI blew up in our faces, and so now I'm literally my job is to research, analyze some new technologies, changes that are rapidly transforming both data and AI space, and then try to connect the dots, explain to people what's going on. I help a lot of my clients with their offerings. I write blogs, I record podcasts. So basically, I'm, to be honest, having time of my life. So
it's a great time to be in tech for sure. So before we begin, Sanjeev, tell us about Davos. I read your Medium article; it was amazing. Maybe just a minute or so on kind of what your overall experience was there.
So Davos is an example of what I get to do now, because I have no boundaries. I have no bosses to tell me what to do or what not to do.
Right.
So I decided Davos had been on my bucket list for ages. And I decided, why not just go and explore? So I went with a lot of trepidation. I had no idea what to expect, because unlike other conferences where you have a prescribed agenda, here it's all self-directed. And there are hundreds of events going on. Some you are invited to, some you are not, some you have to pay for massive amounts, and some that are free. So you get to pick and choose and build your adventure. And I have to say, now that I've been there, it was beyond my expectations. The kind of conversations, the people who show up, it's you got to have some gumption to show up. It's not a cheap vacation.
Right.
Everything about Davos is difficult. Getting to a tiny village, hobnobbing with billionaires and government leaders. So the ambience is great. I learned a lot, made some really good friends. I didn't really go for business development. I went more for discovery. Next year, if I do happen to go, my plan is to actually run my own event and have some industry leaders, executives talk about what's going on in IT space.
Wow, that would be amazing. I'll make sure to link to your article in the show notes. It was a great article, and thank you for sharing that with us. So let's talk about AI agents. It's maybe even more hyped than the generative AI craze that's out there. Can you give us a simple definition of what AI agents are?
Yeah. So first of all, when I went to Davos, I had so many conversations with people. Everybody was hooked on to agents, and they're like, "I'm going to build an agent to do X or Y," and I was asking them, "Well, how are you going to do it?" And they're like, "Well, we haven't figured that out."
Right.
So my point is that the whole AI agent space is mired in confusion and maybe overhyped to some extent. But to answer your question, so when generative AI first became really the most the biggest topic we are all talking about these days. The whole purpose of a large language model or any foundation model, could be even a vision or a video image, is to predict the next token. And
Mhm.
using this whole idea of vector search and having a vector embedding of all of world's knowledge, you're trying to predict what comes next.
Sure.
In agent, it's different. It's not about what comes next. It is about action. It's about understanding the context from various different sources, making some sort of doing some reasoning, coming up with a plan of action, and then executing it. So, for example, by the way, I have a frequently asked questions also in the same location on my Medium site,
Hmm.
where I frequently ask questions on AI agents, where I give an example of you get all these emails every day. If you have an agent that can read the email, because large language models are very good at understanding language and even extracting sentiment, even knowing who this email came from, what is my relationship to that person, and then taking an appropriate action. So, for example, if I'm working in a company and my boss has sent me a stinker, then maybe I should escalate it. But if it is a prospect asking me to reschedule a demo, then go update my calendar. So you see, you're understanding the context and you're executing some sort of actions. And if we transpose this to a very complex workflow like supply chain, then agents can automate a lot of our day-to-day tasks. And so that's why there's so much emphasis on agents.
Okay, that's sort of what I've seen. I've seen, yeah, you can read emails and order groceries and things like that. So
Simple stuff. Yeah.
yeah, but so it was sort of like meh to me. But I think when you get into supply chain, it is actually much more
Yeah.
interesting. So
And
I guess how
yeah.
mature are they today? And do you think they're living up to the hype, or are we just at the very, very early stages?
So early stages, I would not have an agent to run my entire supply chain because we're still dealing with problems with hallucination and so I wouldn't say they are mature, but they everything is moving at warp speed.
Hmm.
So I may say something today and I may be eating my words tomorrow. Deep seek just
Right,
hit us like a brick only 10 days ago, and you know
right,
what happened, like $2 trillion of market cap, 600 billion of Nvidia's market cap. It's just things are moving really fast, but agents are not ready. I would use agents for things that are less mission critical. For example, let's say you and I are analysts, we do a lot of research, or maybe within a company I do a lot of competitive intelligence. So I have an agent that is my assistant. It does
hmm,
research on my behalf. So what it does is every day it goes out on the internet, crawls it, tries to see which companies are potentially going to disrupt me, crawls through their website, scrapes their website, summarizes what's going on, and very neatly it presents me in a table. Here are the companies that you should be watching out for. Here are their strengths, their weaknesses. There's some SWOT analysis. I'm just making this up, but
sure.
these agents are really so like a game changer because I don't have the time of the day to crawl through and try to understand what's out there, but an agent can do it for me, and then I can take that input and I'm the pilot. Agent is my co-pilot. Although that may change. And that's a scary part when
Right.
agent becomes the pilot and you become the co-pilot. So, and that's also going to happen, by the way.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah.
Well, so I think that competitive intelligence example is super fascinating to me. I just actually wrote a custom GPT to do competitive intelligence, pick a vendor, and it's going to go through. But I feel like I need to apply my expertise. So I
Yeah.
have, say, a 10-step workflow, and
Yeah.
maybe step one, step two, I want to maybe tweak it a little bit. So how autonomous do you think these things can and should be?
So, the definition of an agent is that it is autonomous. But the level of autonomous may vary. Like some are fully autonomous, some have some feedback, but
Hmm.
the idea for an agent is that it works on your behalf autonomously. If it's not, then it's a chatbot where you are asking questions, giving you
Right.
responses. It's not an agent anymore.
Okay. So I mean, it has to make its own decisions, and that's
Yeah.
quite interesting. So, what do you think are some of the key challenges that organizations are going to face when they're trying to, put AI agents into their infrastructure?
This, challenges include reliability, making sure if it's autonomous and it's going to make decisions and act upon it on my behalf, it better well not hallucinate. Because if it does,
Right.
everything downstream is screwed up, right? So reliability is really important.
Mm,
The second thing is cost is really important. If it autonomously starts doing things that are going to break my budget, then that's not a good thing. So that's the second challenge. The third challenge is data privacy, sovereignty, making sure uh, it doesn't do something that's toxic in nature or exposes credit cards, things like
mhm.
that. Those things can also happen. Uh, Sometimes a model may be trained on Reddit content, and Reddit content may not be all kosher, and then
Right.
all of a sudden it's mimicking what it learned. So that's why reliability is super important. Making sure that the the data sources are curated, the models are trained on curated data sources. There's some sort of knowledge graph, some ontology, or some way to ground the results. Is very important. The second thing that is also happening is that the models are getting far more sophisticated. So this whole concept of chain of thought, where
Right.
it's not just giving you an answer, it's self introspecting and reflecting. Did I have the right answer? Maybe I should give it another shot.
Mm,
I was just reading the OpenAI's response to DeepSeek is something called Deep Research, uh, and I saw a LinkedIn post by the founder CEO of HubSpot. He asked for a marketing plan, and he wrote back and he says, I was blown away with how good it was. But it
mm.
took 11 minutes.
Okay. Wow.
These are the new models, and the interesting thing that's also happening is that these the 1 year ago we were expecting that the best models are the ones that are trained on most data. So the larger the model, the more information it had to accurately answer my responses. But the thinking has changed in this year. It's not about how big your model is, how small your model is, but it's trained on relevant data,
Hmm.
and also it's making decisions at inference time. So this whole
Right.
thing of test time compute is a brand new concept. In fact, with inference time computation, sometimes you don't even need a GPU. That's why Nvidia's stock took a hit,
Right.
because I could be running it on an edge device or my Apple Mac M chip.
Right. Interesting. And you mentioned a couple times, the importance of data. And I
Hmm.
probably for both of our entire career, data has been a problem. And at
Yeah.
that time, we're really focused on rows and columns, structured data, numbers and things like that. What is the state of data for organizations? Like, I don't think they have their structured data right. I don't even know how they're approaching the unstructured stuff. They probably have mountains of PDFs and whatever other formats they have. And what's your sense of how organizations are going to tackle this?
So first of all, 80% of an enterprise's data is unstructured,
Mhm.
and that's untapped at
I
this
feel
point.
like we've ignored it though, like for so long, and now Gen AI. Oh well, now we better go maybe go think
Yeah.
about this.
So I think GenAI makes it really easy to extract the entities or the knowledge which is buried in these structured, unstructured PDFs and all. But structured data is really important, because structured data is where you get the linkages. For example, I can put an embedding model towards a PDF, and I can say extract entity sentiments, and so I can ask questions. But what if I have a lot of PDFs from a lot of different clients? My client information is sitting in, let's say, an Oracle database,
Sure.
and I've got the entire history of transactions. They are not in PDFs. So basically, I need to combine that. Structured data, as we know, we've been struggling with data quality for a long time. But but the problem is, irrespective of how my underlying data is, I cannot be held hostage. I cannot say that let me first put in data governance and
Right.
a data catalog. Let me get my BI correct before I can jump to AI. It's too dangerous because my competitor is already uh, full into AI, and I'm just struggling with getting my data space correct. So my point is that recognize you have your data is imperfect and you have problems, but don't delay your dabbling in AI, because in the long term you'll end up paying the price. You'll have the most pristine data in place, but you would lose out on leveraging it through AI. So it's a delicate game,
Hmm.
because if you put AI on data that has poor data quality, then it'll hallucinate even more and it'll come to bite you. But if you so my point is that you have to take a very practical view of it. It not no longer theoretically, let me do everything by the book. If you do that, then you'll miss a
Right,
bus.
right. Yeah, the days of the years when we had hey, let's do a big EDW project, and like a 3-year project. Those are done. Like, that's clear.
Yeah, yeah. So recognize you've got data in different places, and you may not know the right single source of truth, but use AI to help you with that. The funny thing is, we always criticize regulated industry for being behind times because they spend so much time
Right.
worrying about Sarbanes-Oxley and Basel II and all of these things. Well, guess what? They are now reaping the benefits because they spend so much time like cleaning up their data for compliance reasons, that now they can jump into AI and not worry about data as much.
Oh, very interesting. So I would assume so. There's like mountains of PDFs and whatever other unstructured documents. How
Yeah.
does an organization wrestle with you? They might have sensitive data in there or things that you might not want to get out into the world. Is there new technologies, guardrail systems that people are going to need now to consider? Like, is this a new part of the architecture, or is it data governance plus plus?
So not a new part of architecture. It's with generative AI, unstructured data, we have to do things a bit different, and governance, having these checks and balances, grounding is really important. Companies are already doing it, and the way they're doing it is that they have these. They've created these documents with Q&A that keeps track of what's toxic, for instance.
Mm,
Uh, like if you ask somebody's gender, it says these are the right answers. So I saw that just yesterday. I was looking at one of the vendors' software. They have a bunch of these custom checks. Actually, checks out of the box, but then companies can create custom checks. So this is how generative AI is so different from traditional software development. Traditionally, I developed the software, tested, did unit tests, systems integration test, UAT, I deployed it. And
right.
then I moved on to new features. I didn't worry about the software. But in Gen AI and AI application, I have to constantly monitor it because it can go off the rails even with my best testing, because it's predictive. It's probabilistic,
Right.
and so that's why we have to put a constant monitoring feedback loop, reinforcement learning with human feedback, and we have to constantly evaluate. That's one thing. The second thing
Mm,
is we also evaluating which is the right model. DeepSeek may be a great model for reasoning, but for coding, maybe Claude is still the best. And for summarization and translation, maybe it's Google's Gemini or GPT 4.0. So, and the cost changes all the time. So, what I'm doing in this, in fact, I call this an agent management system. And I've even predicted on the cube that in 2026, Gartner will have a magic quadrant on agent management system.
Okay.
And so evaluation, monitoring, all of these things are much bigger part of the life cycle than it used to be in software development.
Yeah, it's something to think about. I mean, it's almost like you might have a model, different model per use case. It seems super, super complex. And I get, and the monitoring piece, I'd love to maybe double click on that for a minute. Like, it's fairly straightforward with numbers. There's lots of statistical tests,
Yeah.
accuracy, whatever. You could say, hey, the distribution's changing or whatever, and you can stop making predictions. But when we're talking about generating text or audio or video, is there even technology out there that can monitor that at scale? Or how would an organization even approach this if you're pumping out thousands and thousands of emails or videos or audio files? How do you even approach that?
Yeah, and this is where a lot of agent frameworks are falling apart. To be honest, they I don't want to mention them by name, but there are so many of these agent frameworks. They don't scale. They're
Mhm.
incomplete right now. This whole space is rapidly transforming,
Okay.
and and what I'm seeing coming out is like everyday miracles. Every day it's like, whoa, okay, now this changed, but so what? It's like
Right.
we're so used to everyday miracles that we are not even bothered. We are like, we expect these things to happen every day now.
Hmm. Okay. Well, how do you see the role of human decision making evolving or changing? Do we see, maybe some? I'm sure there's some use cases that will be purely autonomous, and some, you definitely want a human in there. It's a spectrum, but you see it being reduced, or what's your thought on that human AI collaboration?
I'm very upbeat about it. I really feel uh, with every new technology, we've had scary scenarios of things, just humans getting devalued. Do you know in 1930s when the telephony industry was taking off, AT&T, the Bell
Right.
Atlantic of the world in the United States, there was a thinking that there would be 3 million jobs, primarily women, and their role would be of switchboard operators. They
Right.
would. Remember those
Sure.
pictures?
Yeah. Yeah. You're plugging in there. You're on a party line. All that stuff.
Yeah. What happened to those 3 million jobs? When ATMs came, it was what happened to all the tellers? Well, the tellers became private client bankers or moved on. So I really don't. I think we're living in the same moment where we think the AI is going to take over all our jobs and what will we do? I actually came across an article, cover page of the Time magazine. I have a link to that. It's very funny. I was just doing a Google search. It's 60 years ago. Uh, Next month it came out, and it basically said human beings will have a lot of leisure time, computers will do everything.
I'm still waiting for that. I feel
I
like I'm
know.
more busy than ever.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't see, I did I published a podcast today with Google Cloud, two of their general manager VPs, and they were saying that AI is writing 25% of our code, but it gives us more time to think more
Okay.
strategically. So all these things, did I get the right syntax and did I miss this, or how do I write this stuff? All that time consuming stuff is just being automated. But I think this is a time for human intelligence to shine. and take us away from busy work. But those are my opinions, and not everybody agrees with that. Even people like Jeffrey Hinton and the father of AI and are very, uh, very scared of what AI is capable of doing. I just think it's, even printing press. When printing press came out,
Right.
uh, you know, in fact, you can even. I'm on slippery territory here, but the Catholic Church was completely disrupted by printing press, because when printing press came out, people like John Calvin and all these people were printing their Reformation ideas and sticking
Right.
it on the church door, and it led to the whole reformist movement. It was hugely disrupting to the Catholic Church, but
Right.
we as humans survived and thrived. We have more books. There's a very funny thing where there's some written documents about parents are very upset that the kids are spending all their time looking down, and not going out and playing, and what's going to happen to this generation. And when you think about looking down and all, you think about their iPhones and iPads. It was about books,
Right.
because the prior generation was illiterate. There was not a lot they could read, and then with over a generation, the kids were reading more and playing outdoors less. So my point is that it's a continuum. With every technology, there's going to be disruption, but humans will thrive. The only thing that will kill us humans is what we're doing to the environment, and nature
Right.
will win, but not technology. We will leverage technology to our benefit.
Speaking of that, you see like these articles like, Microsoft and other companies, hey, we're going to reopen nuclear power plants just to
Yeah.
fuel these. Do you think that's going to continue, or, with maybe small language models, and, you mentioned earlier that bigger might not always be better for the use case. Is that, you think that's the environmental impact of Gen AI? How is that going to maybe change?
It's a I've I've talked about this question a few times on different podcasts, and it, uh, I have to say, on one hand, I see the models are getting smarter and better, more efficient. So the need to have tens of thousands of GPUs to train a model, hopefully, is not going to be the case.
Hmm.
But what is also going to happen, on the other hand, is the Givon's paradox will take place, which says that when we make things more efficient, its usage goes up so much. So basically, if every company has tens or hundreds or thousands of agents, then the usage of Gen AI is going to go up tremendously. So which means we will need these massive data centers to process it. Maybe not as much for training, but for inference.
Right.
So I actually like the idea of Microsoft buying 3 Mile Island and converting one of their reactors to power. So to me, it's renewable. Of course, nuclear waste and all those
Sure.
things are a huge problem. But I don't see any decrease in the number of data centers. Hopefully, they'll use renewable energy and not coal fired, and cause
Right.
more.
Right. So let's assume now, so the technology is sort of becoming, I don't want to say commodity, might not be the right word, but everybody has access to sort of the same models and
Yeah.
technologies. So what do you think is going to differentiate companies? Is it their process? Is it how they deploy it? What will be their competitive edge if everybody has access to these, high powered, you know, technology systems?
It's one word: data.
Mm,
It's a quality, or the richness of the data they have, because no one can replicate that. And so the computation may be the same, the models may be the same. So you may use llama 3 and I may use llama 3 as well. But if I've distilled llama 3 onto my data and sort of post trained it, so it's open source, I have the weights, so I can do post training, then I have an advantage. because I have high quality data which is not available to others. And
Mm.
so I can now do more decisioning, reasoning based on my data. So I think data is the biggest moat for any organization.
And having access to quality and knowing where it is and all of that fun
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. And that includes all those 10,000 PDFs that you have, or emails, uh, messages, Slack messages, all of that.
Okay. What sort of skills do you think companies will need? We talked a little bit about, as the past technological revolutions and, maybe the jobs changed. So what should be companies be looking for right now when they're hiring individuals?
Uh, the one skill that I personally use, and I think is so important, is curiosity.
Mm,
I I would, because so much is getting disrupted. Coding jobs are getting disrupted, but having this flexibility and curiosity to learn and not be afraid to experiment. All these technologies are available for free. You can go to Hugging Face, you can download any model,
sure.
and agent frameworks are free. But just experimenting, like you yourself said, you created a GPT chatbot or something, right?
Yep. Yeah. Competitive intelligence.
Yeah, to do competitive intelligence. That's brilliant. You're already a step ahead. A company that wants to supercharge their marketing would be like, I need David Sweener to help me supercharge what I'm doing because the old ways are not working. So the fact that you've done it and others are doing it, that's what I would look for in a new hire.
Mm. Yeah, it's very interesting. I agree with you on that. Curiosity, an entrepreneurial or experimenting mindset, and being flexible. I don't see those in job descriptions or I've done a lot of interviews and they're always like, hey, I want these 8 skills or whatever it is, whatever role it is. But they seem to, I don't know. I agree with you. That's what I look for. Like I always say, you can't coach enthusiasm and things
Mhm.
like that. I can teach people a lot of things, but not enthusiasm. But I
Yes.
don't see the job descriptions. They don't really focus on those things, nor do the interviews in my experience.
I just made a note for myself. Can't coach enthusiasm. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we're getting maybe close to the end of our time, but maybe we'll talk a little bit about um, just regulation. There's a lot of questions about ethics, regulation. What's the state of where we are? What do companies need to think about?
So we can close by going back to Davos. And and it's so funny because in Davos, I attended a session. It's by an organization called Open Forum, and it was so negative. It was, I have turned off GPS, I've turned off my internet as much as I can, and there was like doom and gloom the whole
Oh,
time,
geez.
and then I went to other sessions where it was like, don't worry about regulation. How do you regulate something that is not even baked? It's
Right.
changing on daily basis. How do you regulate something like that? So and so I saw two extreme ends of it. I am more in favor of experimentation right now.
Mhm.
Also, this notion that AI is in fact, uh, will I am
Yep.
he was I was listening to him talk, and he said World Wide Web, WWW, is Wild Wild West.
Right.
And but the point that I'm trying to make here is that it's not that there are no regulations in place and AI is completely unfettered and it can just cause massive harm. There are regulations in place. They may not specifically be called out for AI, but they're there for data.
Sure.
So I'm not too concerned about AI being unregulated, I think it's just nature of something that's new. AI is not new. We know that it's been there for decades, almost a century, but generative AI and so those aspects are new. Uh, I think those regulations will come in time, but there are some basic safeguards already in place.
Yeah, totally agree with you. So that was a fascinating, quick discussion on agents. Sanjeev, the last one is, what for business leaders, tech leaders out there, like saying, I can't make sense of this. What's your sort of key recommendations to them?
I cut out noise, and there are always people in your organization or outside, like or the analyst firms, for instance. Like talk to them, and but don't get bogged down. I mean, there's so much uncertainty everywhere. Politics, monetary, technology. So social media is like filled with all kinds of very toxic content.
Hmm.
So my advice is cut it out. Just think of what are your business imperatives. How can I improve that? That's it. Just be very focused on that. Can AI play a role? Maybe not. And if that's the case, then that's fine. AI is not a panacea for every issue out there, but take a be very data driven.
Hmm.
What is the problem I'm having? And I don't know what's the right solution because it keeps changing. So I'm going to talk uh, to people in my organization who may know, or give them a project. Go do an ROI, cost value analysis, and see if we were to put AI to take some of our customer service calls, uh, is it going to save us money? But more than money, is it going to improve our
Sure.
reputation? You
Right.
see, so do this analysis, but do it in a structured manner. Use like a lot of AI governance products these days have an ability to capture all of these things that I'm talking about. You were asking earlier, how is AI governance different?
Hmm.
In data governance, we didn't really do all this. We went straight to the tactical pieces. But in AI governance, what I suggest is come up with your list of business strategic objectives, and then do an analysis. If you don't do that, you know what people do these days? They're like, how can I use Llama 3 or uh,
Right.
GPT 4.0? But that's a wrong thing to focus on, because you've jumped to technology when you should really be looking at it from a business side and do it in a structured manner, see the results, and then take that experiment into production if it makes sense.
Expert advice from Sanjeev Mohan. So, Sanjeev, thank you so much for joining the Data Faces podcast. It's been an illuminating discussion. People can go find you on your website, on Medium, LinkedIn. You're everywhere. Hope they give you a call. But thank you for joining the show. This has been a fantastic discussion.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye.